He came home early that day, no warning, no guards, just silence. And in that silence, he saw something that froze his blood. His beautiful wife stood over a small black child, the maid's son, crying, cornered, helpless. Her voice was calm, cruel. People like you need discipline. The child flinched. The mother begged without sound. The millionaire stood in the doorway, unseen, heart pounding, world cracking. In that moment he realized something terrifying. The greatest betrayal wasn't what he was seeing. It was how long it had been happening, in his name, and what he did next shocked everyone. The front gate slid open without a sound, and in that silence something terrible was already happening. No guards announced him, no footsteps warned anyone, just daylight spilling across marble floors, clean and bright, as if the house itself wanted to pretend nothing was wrong. The millionaire had come home early, hours before anyone expected him, and in all his years of wealth and control, that simple decision would become the most dangerous thing he had ever done. He stepped inside his own mansion and felt his breath stop, not because of beauty, not because of pride, but because the air felt tight, like it had been holding a secret too long. The living room opened before him, wide and elegant, sunlight pouring through tall glass windows, the kind of room designed to impress strangers. Dust floated in the light like tiny witnesses, and right there, in the center of all that wealth and polish, stood his wife. Perfect hair, a silk dress that caught the sun, straight posture, calm face. She looked exactly the way magazines loved to photograph her, except she was leaning over a small black child, barefoot on cold marble, shoulders shaking, eyes wide with fear. The child was cornered, trapped between expensive furniture and a woman who believed she owned the space, the air, the moment. The maid's child, too small for the room, too quiet, crying without sound as if even tears were not allowed to be loud here. The sound came before the millionaire could fully understand what he was seeing. A sharp slap of words cutting through the room, cruel words, clean words, words practiced so often they no longer shook the speaker. "You people never learn," his wife hissed, her voice low, controlled, like poison poured slowly. The child flinched hard, like his body already knew pain was coming. His hands came up without thinking, not to fight, not to push back, just to protect his face. Instinct older than the house, older than the money. Near the wall stood the maid, his employee, a woman who cleaned his floors, washed his clothes, kept his home running while staying invisible. Her hands trembled at her sides. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Her eyes begged. Not loudly, not boldly, just enough to show she was breaking inside. Power pressed down on her like a heavy hand on her chest. She could not move. She could not speak. She knew exactly what happened to people who did. The millionaire stood in the doorway, half hidden by shadow, watching, silent, invisible. For the first time in his life, his money meant nothing. His name meant nothing. He was just a man seeing something he could not unsee. His wife's hand shot out and grabbed the child's arm, too tight, not enough to bruise, enough to hurt, enough to humiliate, enough to remind him who was in control. The boy cried out then, a small, broken sound that bounced off glass and stone and died without comfort. Time slowed in a way it never had for the millionaire. Deals worth millions had never slowed his heart like this. Boardrooms had never made his hands cold. He felt every second stretch, heavy and thick, as if the house itself was holding its breath. This was not an accident, not a mistake, not a bad moment. This was routine. He saw it in the way his wife stood so comfortably in her cruelty, in the way the maid did not look surprised, in the way the child cried without screaming, as if he had learned that screaming only made things worse. This scene had played before, many times, without witnesses, without consequences. The millionaire caught his reflection in the glass wall. A tall man in an expensive suit, a man who owned companies, buildings, influence, a man people feared and respected in equal measure. But in that reflection he did not see power. He saw a stranger, a man who had been absent long enough for something ugly to grow in his place. His wife finally noticed the change in the room. Not the silence, that was normal, but the weight of it, the way it pressed back. She turned slowly, already annoyed, already ready to defend herself, and then she saw him. Her face drained of color so fast it was almost frightening. The confidence cracked. The practiced calm fell apart. Her hand dropped from the child's arm like it had been burned. The room went completely still. No music, no footsteps, no air moving. just the child's quiet sobs echoing in a house built on wealth and silence. The kind of silence that usually protected the powerful, the kind that buried truths. The millionaire did not speak, he did not shout, he did not rush forward, he simply stood there, eyes fixed on the scene, taking it in like evidence. And somehow, that terrified everyone more than screaming ever could. The maid's knees weakened, but she stayed standing. She had learned how. The child looked up at the man in the doorway, confused, hope and fear colliding in his eyes. He did not know what this man was yet. Savior, threat, stranger. Only knew the shouting had stopped. And sometimes that was enough to feel dangerous too. The wife forced a laugh, sharp and thin. "You're home early," she said, as if the timing was the problem, as if everything else could be smoothed over with the right tone. She straightened her dress, lifted her chin, tried to reclaim the space. There was an issue. The child was... The millionaire raised one finger, not high, not aggressive, just enough. She stopped. That finger, so small a gesture, carried more authority than all her words. She had seen it before, in boardrooms, in meetings, in moments when men twice her age went silent. She swallowed. The child's arm was red now, not bruised, just marked, a temporary mark from a permanent lesson. The boy hugged himself, trying to disappear into his own body. The millionaire took one slow step forward, then another. His shoes echoed softly on the marble, each sound landing heavy. He did not look at his wife. He did not look at the maid. He looked only at the child. Up close, the boy looked even smaller. Thin arms, dust on his feet, tears drying on his cheeks. A child who had learned too early how to be careful. The millionaire felt something twist in his chest, not anger yet, something deeper, shame. The kind that does not shout, the kind that burns quietly. Behind him, his wife's voice shook. "I was handling it," she said, "too fast. You know how they are. If you don't correct them, they get out of line." The words hung in the air, ugly and exposed in daylight. The millionaire closed his eyes for a second. Just one. Long enough to realize this was not new. Long enough to understand that silence had been his partner. When he opened his eyes, he looked at the maid. She flinched, ready for blame, ready to apologize for something she had not done. Her mouth opened, but again no sound came. Years of fear had trained her well. He noticed her hands then, rough, worn, the hands that cleaned his life every day while he stayed too busy to see who was doing the work. He noticed the way she stood between him and her child, without moving an inch closer, a shield made of love and terror. His wife took a step toward him. "Say something," she whispered, anger creeping back into her voice. "You're just going to stand there?" He did stand there. Long enough for the silence to stretch. Long enough for the power in the room to begin shifting without anyone touchy. Child sniffed and wiped his face with his sleeve. The sound was small, but it landed hard. It cut through the tension like a blade. That was when the millionaire understood something that would change everything that followed. Power does not always announce itself. Sometimes it just watches. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it decides quietly that it will no longer look away. He took another step forward, placing himself fully in the room now. No doorway, no shadow, just presence. His wife's eyes searched his face, desperate to find the man she knew, the man who traveled, the man who trusted her, the man who signed checks and asked no questions. She did not find him. The millionaire inhaled slowly, deeply, as if he were breathing in the truth of his own home for the first time. He still did not speak. And in that silence, something cracked. The maid's shoulders shook as a sob finally escaped her, quiet but real. The child leaned into her leg, clinging. His wife's confidence drained completely, replaced by fear she had never felt before. Fear of consequences. Fear of being seen. The millionaire looked around the room one last time. The expensive art, the polished surfaces, the perfect image. And right in the middle of it all, the proof that wealth could hide cruelty, but it could not erase it. He turned slightly, enough to make his wife step back without realizing it. He looked at the child again, and for the first time his expression softened. The silence he held. The house, frozen in daylight, waited for what he would do next. And the way he did nothing at all made it clear that everything was about to change. He finally spoke, and when he did, his voice was calm, flat, almost gentle. "What's going on here?" The question floated in the air, light in sound but heavy in meaning. It was the kind of question that didn't rush, the kind that waited. His wife turned toward him with a smile that came too fast, too sharp at the edges. A smile she had practiced in mirrors and meetings. A smile meant to control the room. "The child broke something," she said smoothly. "I was teaching discipline." Her tone was firm, like the matter was settled, like she expected agreement to follow. The maid shook her head. Slowly, so slowly it felt painful to watch. Tears slid down her face without noise, carving lines through years of holding everything inside. She did not speak. She knew better. Silence keeps jobs. Silence feeds families. Silence keeps roofs overhead and children alive. Her eyes flicked to her son and then away again, as if even looking at him too long might be seen as defiance. "I didn't touch anything," the child whispered. His voice was so soft it barely reached the air between them. It wasn't a protest. It was a plea. The kind children learn when they know loud truth is still ignored. The millionaire's eyes moved to the table. The broken vase sat there like a prop in a bad play, an antique, old, worth more than some people made in a year. The pieces were clean, too clean, no fingerprints, no smudges, no signs of a child's hands, untouched by truth. He stared at it longer than necessary, as if the object might confess if given enough time. His wife crossed her arms, irritation flashing through her face. "You're taking their side now?" she asked. That sentence landed hard. It was soaked in power, in ownership, in the belief that sides were already chosen long ago. That question wasn't really a question, it was a warning. The room felt smaller suddenly, even with sunlight pouring in. The millionaire did not answer right away. He looked again at the maid, at her shaking hands, at the way she stood straight despite fear pulling her down. He looked at the child, still hugging himself, eyes fixed on the floor. He looked at his wife, standing tall, certain the world would bend as it always had. That moment passed without resolution, but something had shifted. The air no longer felt obedient, and over the following days, daylight began exposing things the dark had protected for too long. It wasn't one big moment, it was many small ones. The way the maid was spoken to in the mornings, sharp words disguised as instructions. The way her name was rarely used, replaced with commands. The way her child was watched, always watched, like a problem waiting to happen. Every spill blamed on him, every noise questioned, every silence suspicious. The mansion stayed bright, spotless. Sunlight filled every corner. But cruelty lived comfortably there. It wore clean clothes, it smiled at guests, it spoke softly and hurt quietly. At lunch one afternoon his wife laughed lightly while cutting her food. "They should be grateful," she said, as if discussing weather. "They're lucky to be here." The maid stood nearby, serving, her face blank. The child sat at a small table in the corner, legs swinging, eyes down. He did not eat much anymore. The millionaire watched his son-like figure from across the room. He noticed how the boy no longer looked up when spoken to, how he froze when plates clinked too loudly, how footsteps in the hall made his shoulders tense. The child had stopped smiling, then he stopped speaking, then he started shrinking, pulling inward like he was trying to take up less space in a house that already told him he didn't belong. The millionaire felt something uncomfortable settle in his chest, a heaviness he could not shake. His home felt colder, even in full daylight. The warmth he once believed lived there felt artificial now, like lighting set for show. So he started asking questions, quietly, not to his wife, to the staff, to drivers, to cooks, to people who usually weren't asked anything at all. He listened more than he spoke. He watched faces, pauses, the way eyes shifted before answers came. Fear left fingerprints even when hands stayed clean. At first people said nothing. Habit runs deep, but silence cracks when it feels safe enough. A driver mentioned hearing shouting late at night. A cleaner said the child was often locked in his room for his own good. A cook whispered that the maid cried in the pantry sometimes, wiping her face before stepping back into view. Each piece landed quietly, but together they formed something heavy. The truth didn't shout. It sank. This wasn't discipline. It wasn't correction. It wasn't about rules or respect. It was domination. Control wrapped in politeness. Cruelty hidden behind silk. The millionaire sat alone one evening, staring at the city lights through glass walls. He had built an empire on being present everywhere that mattered. Yet here, where it mattered most, he had been gone. Long enough for something ugly to grow bold. Long enough for evil to feel comfortable wearing his name. He thought about the boy's flinch, about the maid's silence. about his wife's certainty, and he realized something terrifying. Absence is not neutral. It chooses sides whether you mean it to or not. That night, he walked the halls of his own house differently, slower, listening. He heard whispers behind doors. He saw fear in places where comfort should live. And for the first time, he understood that power always has a favorite, and it is rarely the one without a voice. The next morning, sunlight filled the breakfast room again. The routine continued. His wife spoke casually, confident as ever. The maid served quietly. The child sat still. But the millionaire watched everything now, every word, every glance, every silence. And beneath the calm surface, tension stretched thin, waiting. Because once truth is seen, it does not go back to sleep. And the house, still bright and beautiful, was no longer at rest. The turning point came in daylight, not in the dark where cruelty usually feels safest. It came on the terrace, where the sun showed everything clearly and there were no corners to hide behind. The air was warm. Birds moved freely beyond the glass railings. The city stretched out below, alive and unaware. And yet, on that terrace, time felt locked in place, as if the world had paused to watch what truth would do when it finally spoke. The millionaire stood at the head of the open space, his back straight, his face calm in a way that made people uneasy. He had asked everyone to come. Not requested, asked. His wife arrived first, heels clicking, posture sharp, eyes scanning the scene for control. The maid followed, hesitant, hands folded tightly in front of her, her child clinging to her side. Staff gathered near the edges, uncertain, quiet, already sensing that something heavy was about to fall. No one spoke. The sound of the city drifted up, distant and soft. Sunlight washed over their faces, leaving nowhere for expressions to hide. The millionaire waited until everyone was present. He did not rush. He did not fill the silence. He let it stretch long enough to become uncomfortable. Then he reached for the tablet on the table. He tapped the screen once. A video began to play. At first there was confusion. A hallway, a living room, familiar spaces. Then voices, raised, sharp, his wife's voice, clear, unmistakable. The sound of shouting cut through the terrace, echoing in the open air. The staff stiffened. The maid's breath caught in her throat. The child's fingers tightened in her shirt. The footage showed his wife standing over the boy, grabbing his arm, yelling words that burned even without volume, threatening, controlling, the boy crying, the maid begging softly, hands raised in surrender. The scene ended. Then another began. Different day, same room, same pattern, again and again. Different angles, different times, same cruelty. Silence swallowed the air as the truth unfolded without commentary. No music, no edits, just reality, playing itself back with brutal honesty. The sun kept shining, the birds kept moving, but on that terrace everything felt frozen. His wife took a step back, her face pale now, her confidence draining with each second the footage continued. "This is out of context," she said quickly, the words tumbling over each other, desperate to escape what was on the screen. Her voice sounded smaller than it ever had before. The video ended. The millionaire did not raise his voice. He did not point. He did not accuse. He finally spoke, and when he did, it was soft. "Steady. No," he said. "This is character." The word landed harder than any shout. Character. Not a moment. Not stress. Not misunderstanding. Character is what remains when no one is watching, and everyone there understood exactly what he meant. His wife opened her mouth to argue, but no words came out. For the first time, she was the one trapped by silence. The staff looked at the floor. Some closed their eyes, the maid trembled, tears streaming freely now, no longer hidden. The child stared at the screen, not shocked, not surprised, just tired, as if seeing it confirmed what his body had known all along. The millionaire did not stop there. He tapped the screen again. A new set of documents appeared. Letters, emails, school reports. He held them up, not theatrically, but firmly. "There's more," he said. The room leaned in without realizing it. "The child isn't just any child," he continued. His eyes moved to the boy, then back to the group. "He's a scholarship prodigy, quiet, brilliant, top of his class." The maid gasped softly, a sound caught between pride and fear. The boy's eyes widened slightly, confusion flickering across his face. He had never heard these words spoken aloud here. "Teachers wrote letters," the millionaire said, "many of them. Letters recommending advanced programs, support, opportunities." He paused, letting the truth breathe. "I never saw them." His wife's head snapped. "Stop. That's not." They were intercepted, he said calmly, thrown away. The terrace felt smaller now. The sun harsher. Because education makes the powerless dangerous, he finished. That sentence cut through everything. It explained the cruelty, the fear, the control. It stripped away excuses and left intention exposed. The boy looked up then. For the first time since arriving on the terrace, he lifted his gaze fully. His eyes met the millionaire's. There was no anger in them, no accusation, just a quiet question. Am I finally seen? The millionaire moved without hesitation. He walked toward the child and knelt, lowering himself until they were eye level, not above, not towering, equal. The staff watched, stunned. His wife stared, unable to stop him. I'm sorry, the millionaire said. 2 words, simple, honest. He did not offer money. He did not promise gifts or favors. He did not speak of fixing things later. He offered respect, the kind that should have been there from the beginning. The boy blinked, unsure how to receive it. No adult had ever knelt for him here. No apology had ever come his way. His lip trembled, but he did not cry. He stood still, absorbing the weight of being acknowledged. The room shifted in that moment. It was subtle, but it was real. Power cracked, not shattered, cracked enough to let something human through. The maid covered her mouth with her hand, her shoulders shaking. Years of swallowed pain surfaced all at once. Staff members exchanged glances, something like relief passing between them. Truth had been spoken out loud, and once spoken, it could not be undone. His wife took another step back. Her world was collapsing in slow motion. The image she had curated, the authority she had enjoyed, the safety of believing she would never be challenged. She saw it clearly now. Cruelty leaves evidence, always, even when you think you've erased it. And dignity, no matter how long it is buried, always finds daylight. The millionaire stood and faced her. He did not look angry. That was the worst part. Anger would have been familiar. This calm was final. This ends now, he said. The words were not loud, but they carried weight. They echoed in the silence that followed. His wife searched his face for mercy, for negotiation, for the man who used to look away. She did not find him. The child reached for his mother's hand. She squeezed it, grounding herself. The sun continued to shine. The terrace remained open, but nothing was the same anymore. The millionaire looked around one last time, meeting the eyes of his staff. Everyone here deserves safety, he said. Everyone. Then he turned back to the boy. You belong here, he added. Not because of luck, not because of charity, because you matter. The boy nodded slowly, as if storing those words somewhere deep, somewhere they could grow. Behind them, his wife stood alone, exposed by the truth she had thought invisible. She understood now that power borrowed from silence always comes due, and the bill had arrived in full daylight. As the meeting ended, no one rushed away, no one spoke. The tension did not dissolve. It hung there, ick, and unresolved, like the air before a storm breaks. The truth had flipped the room, but consequences were still coming, and everyone knew it, because when dignity finally steps into the light, it does not do so quietly. It demands change, and not everyone survives that demand unchanged. The resolution did not come with shouting. It did not arrive with slammed doors or raised voices echoing through the halls. It came quietly, firmly, with consequences that did not need noise to feel heavy. The decision was made the same day the truth came fully into the light. The wife was removed from the house before sunset. No long speeches, no negotiations, no final argument shouted across marble floors, just silence. This time, silence was not fear, it was choice. She packed what she could while the house watched without watching. Staff kept their distance. No one offered help. No one met her eyes. The power she once carried through those halls like perfume evaporated the moment the truth spoke her name. When she walked out the front door, there were no tears, only disbelief. The kind that comes when someone realizes too late that control is not the same as respect. The gate closed behind her with the same soft sound it always made. But this time, it sounded final. Legal actions followed quickly. Quiet meetings, documents signed with steady hands, contracts rewritten to protect those who had never been protected before. Cameras repositioned, not to watch in secret, but to ensure transparency. Rules established that did not bend for wealth or status. Safeguards installed where trust had once been assumed. The mansion learned new boundaries. So did the man who owned it. The maid was called into the study one morning. She stood at the doorway, heart racing, years of habit telling her to expect the worst. But the millionaire did not sit behind his desk this time. He stood. He asked her to sit. She hesitated, unsure if it was a test. When she finally did, her hands shook in her lap. "You're not just staying," he told her. "You're advancing." The words felt unreal. She blinked. He explained calmly. A promotion, authority over household operations, a salary that reflected her work, not her silence. Legal protection written into her contract, time off, benefits, respect, placed clearly on paper so it could not be taken back by mood or memory. She cried then, not quietly, not politely. She covered her face and let years of fear pour out. The millionaire did not interrupt. He let the moment belong to her. The child stood outside the door, listening, not fully understanding but feeling something shift. Later that week, the millionaire drove him himself to a school campus surrounded by trees and open space. The best school he could offer. Not as charity, not as a favor, as correction, as repair. "This isn't a gift," he told the boy gently as they walked the grounds. "It's what should have happened all along." The boy nodded, clutching his backpack. He was quiet, as always, but his steps were lighter. Life returned to the mansion, but it was different now. The air felt cleaner. Not because the floors were polished, but because truth no longer hid behind them. Staff spoke more freely. Laughter returned in small ways. Meals felt warmer. The house, once bright and cruel, became simply bright. The millionaire changed too. He spent more time at home. He listened. He noticed. Power no longer distracted him from responsibility. It sharpened it. One afternoon, he stood at the window overlooking the garden. The boy sat beneath a tree, books spread around him, sunlight resting gently on the pages. He was calm, focused, safe. The maid watched from a nearby bench, her posture relaxed in a way it had never been before. In that quiet moment, the millionaire understood, something he wished he had learned sooner. Wealth doesn't reveal who you are. It amplifies it. Cruelty grows bold when it thinks no one is watching. It feeds on silence. It wears comfort like armor. But goodness, real goodness, becomes powerful when someone finally stands up and refuses to look away. The millionaire did not just lose a marriage that day. He gained a conscience. One that spoke loudly enough to guide his actions even when no one else was around. He turned away from the window as the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the garden. The boy looked up and waved shyly. The millionaire waved back. The lesson stayed with him, and it stays with us, because the true measure of power is not what you can control. It is who you choose to protect when no one is forcing you to care.